Hi guys, Ren here and welcome to the workshop. Today I have one more unusual bike build coming up, and it's this Winspace Ultra Air that I just received. And yeah, it's very different than the high-end boutique bikes that I normally work on. Although this is from one of my regular customers who has a ton of those bikes, so he wanted something more exotic, and this certainly is one of those, at least here where we live. So Winspace is a Chinese brand, but it's not a low quality knockoff of a frame from a renowned brand, but it should be, or they tell it's their own design. It certainly doesn't look to be very cheap or low quality. I would even go out and say that it looks quite alright. The paint job is quite nice. This flip color is very much on trend. It has an integrated handlebar system, but no integrated cables, which is a bit odd, but obviously that designing that requires some or quite a lot of engineering resources, so probably that's why. It's a full-on aero bike, very aggressively shaped, and yeah, certainly on trend with that as well. Some flat back profiles on the down tube, on the seat tube, wide seat stays and fork, so that's also quite a modern touch. Aero shaped seat post, of course. Yeah, some high modular stickers that make no sense, but renowned brands do that as well. The bottom racket is a BB86 press fit. It still has some cups left in there without the bearings, so that will be a bit of a pain to remove, but nevertheless I will do that. As you can see, the bike is sort of half set up with this 105 level group set, but this is going to go away, and perhaps not in a typical fashion for a frame like this. It will be outfitted with some pretty high-end parts. So I have an Enve SES aero handlebar over here, Ritchie stem to match, and then we have some Ceramicspeed upgrades, a Quark power meter, and a full-on Dura Ace Di2 disc brake group set. So yeah, not so high-end frame, high-end equipment. We'll see how it goes. Okay guys, the Winspace is now up and running. Well, almost, because I don't have the wheels for it, but anyway, I used my own ones to set up the braking and the shifting, so in that regard it's complete. And yeah, as I shown in the parts, you can see that this is not how a typical Winspace will be equipped, but at least it showed me a couple of things regarding the frame and its features. So let's start with one thing that I like. The threaded inserts are replaceable on both the fork and the frame, so that's nice. Also, the true axles don't have those nasty levers on there, so that's good, although not as neatly recessed into the frame as with bigger brands. The most obvious downside was the cable routing. Normally, for example, with a Venge or a Tarmac, you get all different kinds of spacers for different cockpit and drivetrain configurations. Not here, unfortunately. It's relatively neat when you use the standard cockpit, but due to fit issues, as you can see, don't blame me, this was not my idea. I had to be quite creative to fit a standard stem and an Enve handlebar, because normally the front brake hose routes through the fork all the way at the front of the head tube, in front of the fork steer, and then straight up to the bar and the cavity in the bar stem combination. Because we removed that, firstly there was nowhere to take the front brake hose out, so for that I had to modify the headset top cap and one of the spacers, and strangely nothing else is routed internally in the original configuration. So the rear brake hose and both shift cables exit here, and there are cable stops placed here and here on the other side. Now the thing is, with Di2, the Di2 cable connector doesn't fit through the cable stop. I would have to have drilled it, but since I was modifying the headset anyway, I decided to just drill this one instead. So right now we have a configuration that's very similar to the Specialized bikes that I normally work on. So everything from the bike exits here at the front. Ideally I would have liked it, or both, well, all three, sorry, things to exit here in this area, but here is where the spacers join and they plug into the headset top cap, so I couldn't do that. This way it's not as neat as it could have been, but pretty close. Also, if you were to use a Venge stem that has this little cable bat here, it would be really perfect. Stem wise, normal stems fit here, even though it doesn't have a regular steerer tube. It has a D-shaped, pretty weird steerer tube. That's why you have this offset top cap that you have to use. But yeah, otherwise pretty standard. Now, yeah, as I said, the lack of small spare parts. Maybe if you buy the frame originally from a vendor, they do come with it. With this one, I had nothing to work with, so maybe there are some blank imports here. I had to resort to some electrical tape here, but still I think it's a lot cleaner than it was originally, or it would have been. Further down we have Enve bottle cages, pretty normal stuff. Sometimes the positioning of the bottle cage mounts on these frames is weird. This one is okay. One thing that is weird though is the exit port for the front mech Di2 wire. For some reason it's here on the front, so it kind of goes around all the way back, which is weird. I would have preferred it to exit somewhere here where the cable exit is anyway, or thinking in hindsight I could have perhaps drilled this hole a little bit bigger, but anyway, it's quite reasonable as it is. The seat post and the binder are pretty okay. I have no way of testing the clamping force or if it's good enough, but just to be sure, I put on a lot of grip paste inside there. It's quite easily accessed to, although Strangely, there are no torque markings on here, so I just resorted to 5 Newton meters. That's pretty standard. Down to the bottom bracket area, it's a press fit BB86. So that's one of the less problematic ones. Maybe threads would have been preferable, but still pretty good here. Not overly tight, not overly loose. In terms of the fit, everything went on pretty normally, so that's all well and good. To the back of the frame, well, nothing really to mention here. Standard flat mount, standard mount here for the rear mech. No option for direct mount for Shimano, or at least not that I know of. And also with a frame like this, it can be problematic if you, for example, snap a rear mech hanger and then getting a replacement. Well, it could be tricky, but it's pretty sturdy and it bolts through the frame, some pretty large bolts, so that should survive some abuse. Yeah, so these are features of the frame itself. I also used some foam sleeving, should I say, on the rear brake hose, like I normally do on all bikes. I didn't have one originally, so now it's pretty much up to spec in terms of the build. As for the Di2 wiring, very standard configuration. So 4-way junction here and 2-way junction here, with the levers connected through the handlebar internally. So again, very standard. I've used my signature low bulk Di2 plug style fitting here because I just hate the huge bulk that comes with the standard configuration, so I'm happy with that. The bar tape is also Enve. It's one of the best ones that I've used in recent times, so I've used that. Matches the Enve handlebar pretty well. It's a size 44, by the way, flares out to 46 or even more, I think, in the drops. I'm not really familiar with these larger sizes because I rarely sell them, because rarely it happens that people need them. So this is basically what I have observed from the Winspace frame set. It's not amazing by any means, or really surprising, and it's also not terrible. So I don't know how much they only got it for. Probably it was good value, and it can probably compete with bikes that are in its price range. Although if you're looking for all-out performance, probably at this lower end or lower budget, perhaps there was some CFD modeling on the frame for aerodynamics and also for stiffness, etc., but probably not as much as you would get from a bike from a bigger manufacturer with more history in that area. And probably, but it's just my guess really, there has been no wind tunnel testing and validation, and for sure not World Tour level racing conducted on this one, just because, yeah, as I said, the price bracket. So yeah, these are my thoughts. It's UCI certified and it appears to be well made, which has been confirmed by others. I've checked some other videos on YouTube, so probably not dangerous. For sure much better than counterfeit Chinese frames that well, one of those I worked on before, so that's just quite scary stuff. This one isn't. So yeah, I would still of course advise to stick to well-known manufacturer with more reputation and better service, or at least existing one. But yeah, could be potentially a pretty decent option. Okay, so that's all for today. Thanks for watching and see you next time.